This defeat opened the floodgates for Western imperialism in Southeast Asia. But how exactly did the most powerful kingdom in Southeast Asia fall to the Portuguese? Let's find out. Mabuhay or in Kapampangan, luwid kayo. Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Kirby, Araullo, your friendly Pinoy historian. And if you are new to my channel, in this channel, I make videos about our people's history, our people's culture, and everything in between. So if you like any of those things, don't forget to like, share this video, comment down below, and please subscribe. And so in today's video, we'll be talking about the Portuguese conquest of Malacca in 1511 and learn how the Sultanate of Malacca, which was once the most powerful kingdom in Southeast Asia, was conquered by the outnumbered Portuguese. What exactly happened? So first, a little background. The dawning of the European age of exploration and colonialism in the 15th century was brought about by a quest to find alternative routes to the Moluccas, or the Spice Islands in Asia. In the late Middle Ages, European kingdoms were reliant on the Muslim empires of the Middle East to bring commodities like pepper, nutmeg, and cinnamon into Europe from the East Indies, or what is now Southeast Asia. Yet, the prices of these commodities were extremely expensive in Europe, so it was a desire to find alternative routes into the East Indies by sailing around Africa or across the Atlantic Ocean that drove European voyages of discovery and colonialism in the 15th and the early 16th centuries. As a result, Portuguese explorers such as Bartolomeu Dias tiptoed down the coast of Africa between the 1410s and the 1480s, until at last, Vasco da Gama led the first European expedition all the way to India in 1497. But it was not until the 1500s that the East Indies were reached. And when the Portuguese arrived in Southeast Asia, they faced a number of powerful kingdoms, which occupied the gateway to the East Indies around the Malay Peninsula and on the island of Sumatra. The most prominent of these kingdoms was the Sultanate of Malacca. This is the story of how Southeast Asia's most powerful sultanate was conquered by the Portuguese in the early 1500s. The Sultanate of Malacca, or in Bahasa Melayu, Kesultanan Melayu Melaka, had been founded around the year 1400, when a ruler from the city of Palembang on the island of Sumatra by the name of Parameswara, or by his Islamic name Iskandar Shah, established a new settlement at Malacca on the western coast of the Malay Peninsula, roughly midway between the present-day cities of Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. With this ideal location in the middle of the Straits of Malacca, the town soon grew into a bustling capital city of a maritime empire, lying right in the middle of one of the world's most important trading routes. For a time, it was a major trading center with Ming China, while it also benefited from the fact that many of the Muslim and Hindu states which ring around the Indian Ocean were enjoying a period of prosperity in the 1400s, one in which benefited trading cities like the Sultanate of Malacca. Based on its profitable trade and wealth, the Sultanate soon expanded, eventually dominating the southern end of the Malay Peninsula and much of the neighboring island of Sumatra. Thus, by the end of the 1400s, the Sultanate was the foremost power in the region, and it acted as the gateway to the Moluccas. Moreover, the city blossomed culturally, with Bahasa Melayu becoming the most widely spoken language across much of the East Indies. The city of Malacca itself emerged as a major center of Islamic learning and culture in Southeast Asia. By that time, there were as many as 50,000 people living in the city from all across Asia. But sadly, this golden age would not last long for the Sultanate. Danger was on the horizon and they spoke Portuguese. The Iberians had arrived in India in the 1500s and soon had information which confirmed that Malacca, the gateway to the long sought after Spice Islands, was only a few days' voyage further east. Moreover, it was confirmed that at Malacca, commodities like cloves, nutmeg, pepper, porcelain, and silk could all be purchased at a fraction of the price they sold for in Europe. And thus, King Manuel I of Portugal, upon learning this, was determined to reach the Spice Islands before the Spaniards, because a shipload of these commodities, which could be obtained cheaply in Malacca, would fetch an enormous fortune if brought back to Europe. The Portuguese first made direct contact with the Sultanate of Malacca in 1509, when a small armada of 4 ships under the command of Diogo Lopes de Sequeira arrived at the city, having traveled via India, where the Portuguese had established trading stations along the coastline. At first, the Portuguese were received quite amiably by Sultan Mahmud Shah, who had ruled Malacca since 1488. The Sultan agreed to allow the Sequeira to establish a feitoria, a factory or a trading post, which foreigners like the Portuguese were allowed to establish in the port. But the Sultan was soon convinced otherwise, with a number of other foreign trade representatives from India and the Middle East petitioning Sultan Mahmud Shah to expel the newcomers. Their economies would be negatively impacted if the Europeans were able to establish routes to trade directly with Malacca, and this would also end their lucrative position as the middleman in the European spice trade. Sultan Mahmud Shah was won over by their arguments, and within weeks of arriving in Malacca, the Sequeira was sent packing. He was violently expelled from the city, so much so that 20 of his men were left behind as prisoners of the Sultan. The Portuguese reaction to being rebuffed by the Sultan would be swift and brutal. At roughly the same time that the Sequeira was making his way to Malacca in 1509, Alfonso de Albuquerque was named as the Portuguese viceroy in India. Albuquerque was a brilliant naval commander who had conquered the island of Socotra, located in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean in 1507, and he soon brought the Indian city of Goa under the Portuguese rule in 1510. And now, in early 1511, Albuquerque was determined to travel eastwards with a fleet and try to capture the city of Malacca. In April, he gathered together an army of several hundred Portuguese and hundreds of mercenaries from the Malabar coast of India. Aboard a fleet of 18 ships, he set off to conquer Malacca that spring. Unknown to many, Ferdinand Magellan was also among the Portuguese conquistadors who joined Albuquerque in this invasion of Malacca. A decade later, Magellan would sail around the world and attempt to conquer what is now the Philippines for the King of Spain. But his arrogance would lead to his death at the hands of the Visayan warriors led by Dato Lapu-Lapu in the Battle of Mactan in 1521. So if you want to learn more about this epic battle, check out my video about it in the links up here or down below. But for now, let's rewind back to 1511. Albuquerque arrived in Malacca in the middle of summer in 1511. In Malacca, his army was massively outnumbered. The Sultan had hired thousands of mercenaries from all over Asia to defend the city. However, the Portuguese had distinct advantages. They also had their own allies and much bigger ships, armed with heavy artillery, guns, and more armor. Despite being well defended, Malacca was also reliant on outside sources for their food supply. And the Portuguese naval blockade meant that sooner or later the city of Malacca would run out of food and the people would starve. Fearing these factors, Sultan Mahmud Shah agreed to release the 20 Portuguese soldiers in prison left by the Sequeira in 1509. But this did not satisfy Albuquerque's thirst for blood, and the siege of Malacca soon followed. But how exactly did Malacca fall? How did the most powerful sultanate in Southeast Asia easily defeated and fall to the Portuguese? I mean, Malacca was well defended, and it has its own impressive firepower and thousands of warriors from all across Asia. What exactly led to its demise? As mentioned in my older videos, unknown to many, Asian powers like the Javanese, Tamil, Luzones, and the Chinese also played a pivotal role in the conquest of the Sultanate of Malacca. But before we accuse the other Asians of being traitors for siding with the Portuguese, it is important for us to understand that the geopolitics of the 1500s was far different from our modern day understanding and concepts of nation states. It was not black and white, nor was it Asians versus Europeans. During this time, Sultan Mahmud Shah of Malacca was very controversial. He was notorious for his opium addiction and for exploiting women, especially those who were already married to his own followers and court officers. Corruption was also rampant under his rule, and the Sultan himself was at the center of the conspiracies and internal disunities. And these included the brutal murder of Malacca's own Bendahara, or Prime Minister, and his entire clan in 1511, so that the Sultan can marry the Prime Minister's daughter, Tun Fatima. Tun Fatima was the daughter of Bendahara Sri Maharaja Tun Mutahir, and she was already married to Tun Ali. But during their wedding, Sultan Mahmud Shah laid eyes upon Tun Fatima and asked her to divorce her husband. Following Tun Fatima's refusal and fueled by Tun Mutahir's own rivals, the Sultan had Tun Fatima's father, her husband, and all the males in their family executed, citing a false attempted coup d'etat. Through this massacre, the Sultan got his wish of marrying the beautiful Tun Fatima in 1510. Interestingly, it was Tun Fatima who became well known for being fearsome in the battlefield and leading an army to defend the Sultanate against the Portuguese in 1511. In fact, it was recorded that the Portuguese were more afraid of Tun Fatima than they were afraid of the Sultan. She was also responsible for the dynasty's survival after the fall of Malacca. The massacre of Tun Mutahir and his entire clan shattered the stability of the Sultanate. For one, Tun Mutahir was an effective politician who was also blood related to the leaders of the prominent Tamil merchant community. His family was also among the greatest and most respected noble houses of the Sultanate. And so this brutal massacre alienated the Sultan and his government from the powerful merchant communities. The Portuguese wasted no time and took advantage of these divisions. Given the limitations of their forces in Asia, it was important for Portugal to seek alliances with other powers in the region. It was crucial for them to take advantage of the Sultan of Malacca's unpopularity. And thus, Alfonso de Albuquerque began secret communications with the Javanese, the Luzones, Tamil, and Chinese leaders. Although reluctant and skeptical at first, they were soon won over by the Portuguese, with the promises of restoring fair trade and respecting their rights and privileges that were taken away after Tun Mutahir's murder. The conflict eventually culminated in a direct engagement between Albuquerque and the Sultan's warriors on a bridge at the port. And in the course of this battle, the Sultan's army suffered heavily. The Sultan then fled the city of Malacca, following which many of the merchant communities mentioned earlier helped in facilitating the city being turned over to the Portuguese, with the guarantee that the Portuguese will respect the rights and privileges of the people. And thus, it was in the early autumn of 1511 that the city of Malacca fell to the Portuguese and became the capital of their colonial possessions in the East Indies. The Sultanate of Malacca was officially at an end. And in the years that followed, Sultan Mahmud Shah made efforts to revive his power by retaking Malacca. But despite numerous attempts to capture the port from the Portuguese in the late 1510s, it remained a Portuguese colony. And unknown to many, especially for my Filipino viewers, it was also in Malacca in 1511 or perhaps even earlier in 1509 that the Europeans first learned about the existence of the islands we now call the Philippines, and not during the so-called discovery of the Philippines by Magellan in 1521. In fact, immediately after the fall of Malacca in 1511, a decade before Magellan reached the Visayas, the Portuguese Empire appointed Regimo de Raja from the Kingdom of Luzon as the Temengong of Malacca. He was a native of what is now the Philippines, who by then was already a very wealthy merchant and a popular leader in the local community of Malacca in the early 1500s. A Temengong is both a military rank and a political position, often translated in English as Sea Lord or as Minister of War. And as Temengong, Regimo de Raja was in charge of security by overseeing the police, the local army, and the local navy, while at the same time, he was also responsible for managing Malacca's international maritime trade. So it's similar to the governor generals that we are familiar with today, but with the added bonus of being an international business tycoon in charge of the world's busiest shipping lanes. And under the Sultanate, the Temengong of Malacca was the third highest official in the land, right below the Sultan himself and the Bendahara or Prime Minister. Another famous and remarkable Luzones in Malacca during this time was Surya de Raja, who was also a very wealthy spice trader and a diplomat, who soon became instrumental in bringing the Portuguese to China. And the Portuguese did not only hitch a ride aboard his massive fleet, but as merchant politician, he was also an important bridge in the early diplomacy between Portugal and China. The word de Raja in Bahasa Melayu means royal. It is used across Southeast Asia to refer to people with royal blood, or what we call the Mapiang Sugi in Kapampangan. The Luzones clan in Malacca bearing the name de Raja were therefore most likely related by blood to either the royal families of Malacca or the royal families of Luzon, or perhaps even more likely, given their status and influence across the region, from the Kingdom of Luzon to the Sultanate of Malacca, they were related to both. It is also worth noting that apart from siding with the Portuguese in 1511, the warriors of Luzon would soon be part of the pan-Southeast Asian alliances that made numerous attempts to retake Malacca from the Europeans between 1511 to 1641. And we can talk more about this in future videos. In fact, all of the topics we're talking about today are also part of my book series, Know Our Roots. So if you want to learn more about these topics, check out the links below and get a copy of any of my books. And stay tuned for more videos about the history, the colorful history, and the rich cultures of Southeast Asia. But for now, let's go back to Malacca in 1511. The collapse of the Sultanate of Malacca fundamentally altered the geopolitics of the region, and while the city of Malacca would remain in Portuguese hands, the power vacuum created by the collapse of the Sultanate allowed for the emergence of other Muslim powers in the region. And along the Straits of Malacca, these were the Sultanate of Aceh on the northern end of Sumatra, and the Sultanate of Johor on the southern end of the Malay Peninsula. These two sultanates guarded both ends of the Straits of Malacca, one of the major and busiest trade routes in history. In fact, to this day, the Straits of Malacca remains one of the world's most important shipping lanes. It is also worth noting that the Sultanate of Johor was founded by Sultan Alauddin Riayat Shah II, the son of Tun Fatima from her marriage to Sultan Mahmud Shah of Malacca, and thus the Sultanate of Johor was considered to be the rightful successor to the Sultanate of Malacca. And sailing eastwards towards the center of Southeast Asia on the island of Borneo, the Sultanate of Brunei would emerge as the dominant power in the region by conquering neighboring kingdoms and by engaging in marital alliances with the Sultanate of Sulu and the Kingdom of Luzon. Brunei under my ancestor Sultan Bolkiah would expand across the archipelago, exerting hegemony in what are now the countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. And to the south of Borneo, on the island of Java, the Jepara Kingdom aka Kalinyamat Sultanate would also become an important powerhouse led by their fierce queen, Ratu Kalinyamat. Just like Tun Fatima, Ratu Kalinyamat was another warrior queen that the Portuguese feared and respected. Under her leadership in the late 1500s, the Kalinyamat Sultanate would send numerous attacks against the Portuguese, from Malacca to the Moluccas, with the end goal of liberating the region from Europeans. These kingdoms and sultanates from Aceh to Johor, from Luzon to Brunei, from Sulu to Jepara would become considerable powers in their own right, succeeding the Sultanate of Malacca's preeminence in the geopolitics of Asia in the decades that followed. In contrast, the Portuguese eventually lost ground to the Dutch Republic in capturing the trade of the Spice Islands, and thus while the conquest of Malacca temporarily gave the Portuguese control of the spice trade, this dominance would ultimately prove to be short-lived. For many Southeast Asians since 1511 to this very day, the fall of Malacca was a sad tragedy. It was the first kingdom to fall under European colonialism, and it opened the floodgates for Western imperialism in the region, ushering in centuries of exploitation, injustices, and genocide across Southeast Asia. In fact, many of the present-day issues and problems plaguing the diverse people and societies of Southeast Asia can trace their roots all the way back to this age of colonialism and imperialism. But it wasn't all bad for the history of Southeast Asia and our diverse people, so stay tuned for more videos in the coming weeks. And that is it for me today, so let me know what you think about today's topic in the comments below. What lessons can we learn from the fall of Malacca? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you like this video or learned a thing or two, don't forget to like, share this video, comment down below, and please subscribe. Help me grow my channel so more people can learn more about our people's history, culture, and everything in between. But of course, before we go, today's shoutout goes to Zafira from Melaka in Malaysia, Arun from India, Asma Khan from Pakistan, Joao Martim from Portugal, Lawana from Thailand, and shoutout to Datu Sandigan Ali Husayan Diwan from Bukidnon in Mindanao, Philippines. And of course, special thanks and special shout out to my patron, Juval Racelis. This video will not be possible without the love and the support of all my patrons through the years. Kaya naman, maraming salamat po. So for those who want to help me make more videos like this, show your support and please be my patron or join my YouTube channel. Or you can also show your support by buying any of my books or coloring books or any of the merch linked down below. Maraming salamat po, agyaman at daghang salamat, dakal pong salamat, or in bahasa Melayo, terima kasih. See you next time, where in Tagalog kita kits and in Kapampangan, Mikitix, and in bahasa Melayo, jumpa lagi!